Walk to Moons, Chapter 27, The Phone Call. The next day I helped Phoebe lug her suitcase home. We had spent most of the day doing our homework, so we did not argue too much. On the way to her house I said, Phoebe, I know you've been upset lately. I have not been upset lately, she said. Sometimes, Phoebe, I like you a lot. Why, thank you. But sometimes, Phoebe, I'll have to admit, I feel like lugging your cholesterol-free body straight across the room and dumping you right out the window. She did not have a chance to respond because we were at her house and she was more interested in besieging her father with questions. Any news? Did Mom come back? Did she call? Sort of, he said. Sort of? Sort of which? Is she here? She phoned Mrs. Cadaver. Mrs. Cadaver? Whatever for? Why didn't she call us? Why would she? Phoebe, calm down. I don't know why she phoned Mrs. Cadaver. I haven't been able to speak to Mrs. Cadaver myself yet. She isn't home. She left a note here. He showed it to Phoebe. The note said, Norma called to say she's okay. Beneath Mrs. Cadaver's signature was a P.S. saying that Mrs. Cadaver would be away until Monday. I don't believe that Mom called Mrs. Cadaver. Mrs. Cadaver is making it up. She probably killed her and chopped her up and buried her under the Phoebe Winterbottom. I'm calling the police, Phoebe said. They had a huge argument, but at last Phoebe fizzled out. Her father said he had been calling everyone he could think of to see if her mother had indicated where she might be going. He would continue calling tomorrow, he promised, and he would speak with Mrs. Cadaver first thing on Monday. If he did not receive a letter or a direct phone call from her mother by Wednesday, he would call the police. Phoebe came out on the porch with me as I was leaving. She said, I've made a decision. I am going to call the police myself. I might even go directly to the police station. I don't have to wait until Wednesday. I can go whenever I want. That night she phoned me. She was whispering again. She said, It seems ever so quiet here. I don't know what is the matter with me. I was lying on my bed and I can't sleep. My bed's too hard. Chapter 28, Pandora's Box. On Monday, the day that Phoebe was supposed to give her oral report on Pandora, she was a wreck. When Mr. Berkway bounded into the room, Phoebe said that her heart was hurting and asked if she could see the nurse. Mr. Berkway said, Why don't you get started with your report, and if you still don't feel well in a few minutes, you can stop and go to the nurse. I'm not malingering, she said. Malingering! What a magnificent word, Mr. Berkway said. Phoebe was afraid of Mr. Berkway. She was completely convinced that he was a murderer. Her hands shook as she picked up her notes and walked to the front of the room. She looked around. Beth Ann was filing her nails, and Mary Lou was smiling at Alex. Ben was busy drawing his cartoons and passing them to anyone who would take them. Several people were yawning. It was not the ideal audience. Phoebe began in a quivering voice. For some reason, Ben already talked about my topic, Pandora, when he did his report on Prometheus. She seemed relieved that Prometheus came out correctly, and not as porpoises. However, Ben made a few little mistakes about Pandora. Everyone turned around to stare at Ben. I did not, he said. Yes, you did, Phoebe said. Her lip trembled. As I was saying, Ben made a few tiny little mistakes about Pandora. Pandora was not sent to man as a punishment, but as a reward. Was not, Ben said. Was too, Phoebe said. Mr. Berkway said, Phoebe, if you please. As I was saying, Phoebe continued, Zeus decided to give man a lovely present. Since man seemed a little lonely down there on earth, with only the animals to keep him company, so Zeus made a sweet and beautiful woman, and then he invited all the gods to dinner. It was a very civilized dinner, with matching plates. Mary Lou and Ben exchanged an eyebrow message. At this civilized dinner, Zeus asked the gods to give the beautiful woman presents, to make her feel like a welcome guest. Phoebe glanced at me. They gave her all kinds of wonderful things, a fancy shawl, a silver dress, beauty. Ben interrupted. I thought you said she was already beautiful. I know. They gave her more beauty. Are you satisfied? Her lip was no longer trembling. Now she was blushing. The gods also gave her the ability to sing, the power of persuasion, a gold crown, flowers, and many truly wonderful things such as that. Because of all these gifts, Zeus named her Pandora, which means the gift of all. Her heart attack was apparently subsiding. She was getting into it. There were two other gifts that I have not mentioned yet. One of them was curiosity, That is why all women are curious, by the way, because it was a gift given to the very first woman. Ben said, I wish he had been given the gift of silence. As I was saying, Phoebe continued, Pandora was given curiosity. There was one more gift too, and that was a beautiful box covered in gold and jewels. But, and this is very important, she was forbidden to open the box. Ben said, then why did they give it to her? He was beginning to irritate Phoebe, you could tell. She said, that's what I'm telling you. It was a present. But why did they give her a present that she couldn't open? Phoebe looked puzzled. I don't know. It's just in the story. As I was saying, Pandora was not supposed to open the box, but because she had been given ever so much curiosity, she really, really, really wanted to know what was inside. So one day she opened the box. I knew it, Ben said. I knew she was going to open the box the minute that you said she was not supposed to open it. Misako raised her hand. Phoebe sighed. You have a question? What is in the box? As I was about to say, before Ben interrupted me, inside the box were all the evils in the world. What is evils? Shigeru asked. As I was about to explain, inside the box were all the evils of the world, such as hatred, envy, plagues, sickness, cholesterol. Mr. Berkway scratched his head. He looked as if he might interrupt, but he didn't. Phoebe continued. There were brain tumors and sadness. There were lunatics and kidnapping and murders. She glanced at Mr. Berkway before rushing on. And all that kind of thing. Pandora tried to close the lid. She really tried when she saw all the horrible things that were coming out of it. But she could not get it closed on time. And that is why there are all these evils in the world. There was only one good thing in the box. What was it? Ben asked. As I was about to explain, the only good thing in the box was hope. What is hope? Shigeru said. Hope? Phoebe said. Hope is hope. It's hoping that, Hope is like a little hard to explain. Try, said Mr. Berkway. Everyone was staring at Phoebe. It is a feeling that a wish that something good might happen, and that is why, even though there are many evils in the world, there is still a little hope. She held up a picture she had copied from a book. It was a picture of Pandora opening up the box and a whole shebang of gremlins floating out. Pandora looked extensively frightened. On the way home, I said, you must have been nervous. About what? Phoebe said. About the report. Phoebe, golly. Oh, no, she said, I wasn't at all nervous. That night I kept thinking about Pandora's box. I wondered why someone would put a good thing such as hope in a box with sickness and kidnapping and murder. It was fortunate that it was there, though. If not, people would have the birds of sadness nesting in their hair all the time because of nuclear war and the greenhouse effect and bombs and stabbings and lunatics. There must have been another box with all the good things in it, like sunshine and love and trees and all that. Who had the good fortune to open that one? And was there one bad thing down there in the bottom of the good box? Maybe it was worry. Even when everything seemed fine and good, I worry that something will go wrong and change everything. My mother, my father, and I all seemed fine and happy at our house until the baby died. Could you actually say that the baby died, since it had never breathed? Did its birth and death occur at the same moment? Could you die before you were born? Phoebe's family had not seemed fine, even before the arrival of the lunatic and the messages and the disappearance of Mrs. Winterbottom. I knew that Phoebe was convinced that her mother was kidnapped because it was impossible for Phoebe to imagine that her mother could leave for any other reason. I wanted to call Phoebe and suggest that maybe her mother had gone looking for something. Maybe her mother was unhappy. Maybe there was nothing Phoebe could do about it. When I told this part to Graham and Gramps, Gramps said, you mean it had nothing to do with Phoebe? Right, I said. What Phoebe didn't know was that it had nothing whatsoever to do with Phoebe. Graham and Gramps looked at each other. They didn't say anything, but there was something in that look that suggested I had just said something important. For the first time it occurred to me that maybe my mother's leaving had nothing whatsoever to do with me. It was separate and apart. We couldn't own our mothers. On that night, after Phoebe had given her Pandora report, I thought about the hope in Pandora's box. Maybe when something seemed sad and miserable, Phoebe and I could both hope that something might start to go right.